Welcome back to the Wolff Den, presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder of Ticket Time Machine. Today, we welcome Mike Manazir to the show. Welcome to the Den. How's it going?
Hey, great to see you. Thanks, Matt. It's good to be on the Wolff Den.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun chat here today. For those in the audience who don't know who you are, give a quick intro and then we get to it.
So I'm Mike Manazir. I have retired Navy Admiral. Have 36 years in the U.S. Navy, retired in 2017, worked for an aerospace defense company. And I got to fly Tomcats for a long time and then Super Hornets, got to command the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier. And I wrote about all that in a book called Learn How to Lead to Win. There's a whole bunch behind me up here. Stories about how I learned to lead in my career in the Navy. And so it's kind of great to be here and talk about leadership and the book and anything else you want, Matt.
So the big question everyone's going to want to know, you're a Top Gun pilot. The movies were the big thing last year. Have you seen the latest movie? Obviously, I'm assuming you saw the first one. Did you like it? And how, and what do you think of it as, someone who's been there?
Yeah. So in 1985, February of 85, I was in Top Gun in the class and they were filming the first movie around us, not in the class, but actually down the flight line. And we could watch them set up and do the sets and we could see the actors. Actually met Tom Cruise in the Miramar Oak Club a few months before they started filming. He came to talk to a bunch of us junior officer pilots and talk about flying. We thought he was cool. He thought we were cool, but because we each did the thing the other wanted to do. And all the guys in the first movie, the people in the movie with the aviator glasses on, kind of leaning against the wall, those are all extras. Those are all flying buddies that got into the movie. And so we went on deployment that first year and came back through Hawaii in the middle of 1986. And the whole squadron filled the back two rows of a theater in Hawaii. And we watched that first movie. We were hooting and hollering, seeing the Tomcats. And then at the end, VF-51 was my squadron, and all of the names of the people who had flown it are in the bottom. So we're cheering for the credits and all that kind of stuff. And so the first movie, there's no trophy for being the best pilot. You kind of know who is. It's like varsity athletics. You know who the or some superstar on the sports field. You know who the good people are, right? Just because of the way they play. And so the movie so that one, and then there's the kind of the flying had to be done for to be on camera, and so that was a little bit we don't really fly that way. The second movie was actually pretty good, and so we all watched that. I got to see it in a IMAX movie theater with a whole bunch of retired and active duty admirals. And we were, again, hooting and hollering like we were in a locker room, just yelling at each other, going, that would never happen and stuff. But the flying in the second movie was really good. And, the actors pulling G in the backseat of F-18Fs. I mean, that's really what G looks like. And pulling real hard. And so they got to do the real flying. So we all thought that was pretty cool.
Was it that competitive? I mean, is it?
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's really competitive. It is like, it's really competitive, and you're always striving to be the best, and learning how to fly the airplane better than the other guy. And of course, in air combat maneuvering, we used to say in the 80s, there's no points for second place, right? So you're going to get shot if you come in second.
Yeah.
So that is pretty competitive, and you learn from each other, though. So not only are you competing, but you're teaching at the same time, and you're teaching people like how to fly and what you do with your hands. And so the old guys teach the new guys, and then you get pretty excited when the new guy kicks your butt, because you taught him how to fly the airplane. So, but yeah, it's definitely competitive, and we always have these fighter pilot stories at the bar that get pretty funny, and they're like fishing stories. They get more and more exciting. Yeah.
But you're protecting each other too. I mean, this is real, when you're in flight and you're on missions, a lot of them are dangerous. I mean, you kind of get that feeling a little bit from the movie, but not as much, right? Because when you're out there, with with the enemy trying to shoot you down, Is that every time?
Well, yeah. I mean, if somebody's trying to shoot you down, now your risk goes way, way up. And so we always have rules of engagement that, help us, go past those, or protect us from that kind of risk. But even when you're not, flying in an area where somebody's trying to shoot you down, it's still risky. I mean, flying off the boat, all kinds of things can happen. Something happened to the airplane. You got to really watch your gas. You can't run out of gas. There's nowhere else to go. And so you kind of have this tension level whenever you're flying, because you're just watching and waiting for something to happen. And we train emergency procedures all the time. We do very, very, very high-end tactics. We come very close to other airplanes, even in maneuvering without shooting weapons or anything like that. And so you got to make sure you miss the other airplanes. There's you and the person you're looking at, and there's always some other airplane out there. So the big sky, little airplane theory doesn't work sometimes. And because people are either trying to rendezvous on the back, at the six of a bogey or something like that, you can create collision situations if you don't watch out. So just the training stress can get kind of, high stress and risky. And so we always manage those risks. And you're really teaching, the biggest thing you teach the new pilots and backseaters is really how to manage those risks, how to looking out all the time. Situational awareness is huge. Whether you're running around a ship or whether you're running around with other airplanes in a range or something.
Obviously, something big in the news, this aircraft that was missing or found with the pilot at the jump. But what do you know about that, and what do you think?
I actually only know what the news said. And so, a mishap, something caused the F-35B pilot to eject near Charleston, South Carolina. And when I heard the news, that he ejected somewhere near a couple of lakes, I figured the airplane just went into the lake and nobody had seen it. And I don't even know what time he ejected, really. And I figured it was in the bottom of the lake, and we don't, you gotta get in there and kind of look. I heard another news report that it was found some ways to the north. And so the airplane somehow got from the ejection location up north of that. If he's in a range, the F-35 is designed, to kind of hide from radar. And when we're in a range, we turn off all of the identification devices that the FAA or air traffic control uses to track the airplane. And most of the air traffic control radars are they only track that ID. They don't track radar skin. And so if the pilot had been flying in a range and he turned off those systems like he's supposed to do, if the airplane without him in it leaves the range, then there's no air traffic control radar that's going to pick that airplane up.
And even the government has no way to track. I mean, wouldn't they try and find somewhere they could track their own stuff to know?
Yeah, but you have to look at the radar tapes later on. So we have all kinds of military radars that are out. And so you'd have to go and find the radar data that's in the area, but that would be done afterwards, because once when we transit to a range and we're operating under that control, you're either under range control and there's a radar looking at you, or you might not be. You might just be doing training inside the range and nobody's really looking at you, on purpose or trying to control you. Because once you're in the range, you can manage your own separation from other airplanes. And so once FAA lets you go in the range, you could be flying in there by yourself. I'm not sure what his mission was. It sounded like he wasn't with other airplanes, or he was doing some, just some basic training in there, which might mean that there weren't any systems looking at him.
I mean, it's important to understand for the safety for future stuff, right? What happened to him? Was it something about the aircraft? But also that's an expensive aircraft.
Yeah. There's a story in my book. I jumped out of an F-14 in August of 1987, and it was fairly expensive back then too. And I joke people that I'm still paying the government back, paycheck every 2 weeks. But but when you're trained to eject at you try to preserve that airplane, and guarantee you it's not just a frivolous thing where you go, hey, you know what, I don't feel like being in here anymore. I'll pull the handle and jump out. Right. So something happened where he got himself in extremis and he had to, initiate the ejection. There are 3 different investigations that happen: a legal investigation, an investigation into his procedures, and a safety investigation that we in naval aviation, that's the Navy and the Marine Corps, use to make sure that we understand what happened. And that's what will happen. And the good news is the pilot survived the ejection, and he'll be able to describe to the investigators what happened, and we'll learn something. But yeah, the airplane's a loss.
Yeah, it's crazy. The stories. I mean, I watched a Netflix special about the Malaysia aircraft that just kind of disappeared. That still, to me, is maybe one of the biggest mysteries you have, to see how does this even happen.
I agree. I don't know. That is inexplicable to me. Wherever that thing went, because it, especially where it started, it was under radar control. They had radar track of that thing, and then it just disappeared. And like I said, the air traffic control systems, they track the system when the aircraft turns on an ID. The pilot turns on an ID, and it transmits that ID. It doesn't track. Most systems don't track the raw radar skin of the airplane. And so you have to go back and get that data. And yeah, that's just weird. I mean, after all this time, no debris anywhere. I just strange. I agree with you, Matt. I don't know what happened to that one.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, but scary and sad for the people that are involved. Let's go to the beginning. Why would you want to be in the Navy and fly planes like that?
Oh yeah, that 8th grade, man, 1974 or so. My dad was a Marine, and we went to a Naval Academy Georgia Tech football game at Georgia Tech, and we walked into that stadium, and I watched the midshipmen march on, just like your audience watches them in the Army, Navy, and other Navy games, and I just had this blast in my head, and I said, I want to be that guy right there. I want to be in the Navy at the Naval Academy doing that. And so that's what drove me. That was my focus, start all the way through high school. And then somewhere in there, it kind of refined down to where I want to go fly. I want to fly Navy fighters getting out of the Naval Academy. Started out actually as a Marine fighter pilot, thinking about that because my dad was a Marine, and I love Marines. And I was thinking, okay, I'm going to do that. And then it changed in the middle of my Naval Academy experience to being a Navy fighter pilot. And it was just this thing. That was going to be what I was going to do. And I drove my performance at the academy to do the best I could so I could get a pilot slot. And then when I got down to flight school at Pensacola, Florida, in 1981, late 1981, I started there with the goal. I'm going to fly a Tomcat. I'm going to Miramar and flying Tomcats. And so I did the best I could in flight school so that I could get a Tomcat slot. And in April of 1983, 2 years later, that's what happened. And so I don't know. It was just that's what I was meant to do. And I had I mean, I loved every second of it.
That's incredible to be able to vision that as an 8th grader and then have it happen, because it's not a 1%er, but it's a small percentage of people who want to get to do something like that, to be able to do it. I actually had the privilege of going to an Army Navy game at MetLife Stadium with my brother and my niece and nephew. Real special moment to be able to see that. And I don't know if I told you or Kim, but I'm going to be in the DC area in a couple weeks, and I'm planning on going to a Navy home game, which I've never been to. So that should be exciting to watch. But it's interesting how the football got you all jacked up to get into it, which I imagine you're not the only one. I imagine that happens often.
Yeah, it was actually, and I ask people, I mentor people going into the Naval Academy, going into some of the service academies, and I really want to go there. What do you want to do after that? Because when you go there, it's not a normal college. There's a bunch of BS that happens to you on the way because they're teaching you how to be a naval officer, right? So they take a cocky high school senior scholar athlete person and crush him or her down into, a wannabe naval officer, and then build you back up again. And so there's a lot of stuff that happens that, like, if I went to Maryland or, some other school, I wouldn't have to put up with this. And so you have to have a North Star on the other side to drive you through the extra attention that they give you in there. But I was driven, and it wasn't the football, Matt. It was, I watched them march on, and that midshipman in a black, dark blue coat and white hat, that's what I want to be. I had this thing. And I have met some young people, and you're right, it's a lower percentage that have something in their mind, and that's what they're going to go do. And it's really cool to watch. But gosh, 9.5 or 9.8 out of 10 people, they don't know what they want to do. And even when they get out of college or get to the end of college or somewhere in there, they don't know what they want to do. So I feel pretty lucky about having that drive, and then really lucky that it all worked for me. I worked my butt off to get where I wanted to go, but I, and I say in the book, it's a hand of providence. I think, there's fate and, God's hand and making all this stuff happen, plus some luck and then the drive of the person that's going that way. And I think it all adds up.
I was in my 40s until I figured out what I wanted. We were way ahead of the game. What percentage of people who want to join the Naval Academy can't? Like they start the process and they don't make it through.
Well, when I applied from Southern California, and there were 10,000 applicants my year from California, and there were only 1,000 people in the total class. So it's like, and so there's some small single digit number out of 10,000 people.
But that's interesting to know who can even get into the program, because colleges these days are very competitive just to get into any school. What about the percentage of people of that 1,000 who actually finished? Is it a high percentage? Or I imagine it's, it's very strenuous and mentally, physically, there's just people who can't complete it.
I think we had I think our class was somewhere around 900, like 850 to 900. And, a group of people kind of leave it during this first summer, where they're really, it's like a boot camp kind of thing. And so they're sort of beating on you. And then another group of people leave right before the first academic class of your junior year, because that's when you owe the government time. Right. And so those first 2 years are actually free. You could leave you just don't enter your first academic class of your junior year, and you can have the first 2 years free. Some people did that because they didn't know where they want to commit. And then some, either they couldn't hack it academically or performance wise, or they got in trouble and got kicked out. So I think we had a little over 900 people. So not that many. Once the entering class gets in there, the admissions process does a pretty good job for keeping everybody going.
Do you have any idea how that compares to other armed forces, Air Force, Army?
Yeah, I think it's about the same. I've got a whole bunch of friends that are Air Force Academy graduates and West Point graduates, primarily, and those are the ones that are the closest to the Naval Academy. There are other military accession sources, but they're pretty close. So when we talk about those kind of percentages, most of the graduates, that was about the same for us, because they all have, Air Force and Army especially, have an extremely strenuous program going through to make sure they build professional military officers in each service. And so it's the same kind of pressure on the midshipman or the cadet to get through the full program.
Yeah, it's not for me. I know. And that's fine. You want people who it is for. That's why I think, obviously I'm too young to deal with the draft, but I would think that would be a terrible thing for our country to people who don't
totally, Matt, I totally agree. The quality of our armed forces is so high. There is like 97% of, it's something like that. I mean, if it's not 97, then it's like 93, but it's a very high percentage of young Americans who cannot qualify to get into the military. It could be a court record or drugs, some kind of drug they're taking, or either illegal drugs, drug use, or legal drug use that is disqualifying. Physical standards, they can't get into the military overall. If you go to a draft, we're going to have to make numbers like that. We're going to have to change the standard. And then the second thing is, people worry about the state of our military. I am not worried. The quality of the people that are in the military is absolutely spectacular. The candidates that get in the Naval Academy right now, I couldn't get in. I wouldn't even be close. Yeah. I would be way down in that 10,000 that never even had a shot at it. But the candidates, the diversity is huge, and they're captains of 3 sports, and they've got a 5.0 in honors classes, and they get 1600s on SATs, and they know 3 languages. Same person. I mean, they're just and they want to go do something huge in their life. And so I do a lot of work with the Naval Academy. I live very close to there, and I go over there all the time. I get exposed to the midshipmen, and I hear of the cadets at the Air Force and West Point, and the quality of our midshipmen and cadets is huge. I mean, it's just really, really impressive.
but it has to be. You can't have someone who's just wanting to be there for a free education and meal or something like that, because it's dangerous. And I would think you'd have the ability to weed those people out
Yeah.
and find out who really wants to be part of this.
And there's nobody there that goes, I'm just here kind of skating through. There are people that did appear to be skating, like that it was easy for them, but they wanted to serve, and they took service for their country very, very seriously. There's nobody there that's like, I don't know. If they don't want to be there, they won't be there.
But
And the standards are high as well. So yeah,
it's become a lot more political now than it probably was when you first started, right? I mean, what's your feeling about it?
No, I think the media and the politics and stuff that, the thing about the military is in all of our services. So there's, it's 300,000 or so, 350,000 active Navy, and the other services are about the same. So there's about 1 million people that are under arms or under uniform in the United States, and it's a cross cut of American society. And so a lot of the social and political issues, are tried in the military. Some of the policies that we can do, we can kind of afford to sort of order the military to go along in certain ways. But I will tell you that we professionally are not political. We're apolitical in the military. So I think you see the media, do things and the policies of either the executive branch or the legislative branch. So Congress or the administration puts a policy into the military. The military has to say aye, and they have to execute that. But you won't find a military officer who is or even enlisted person who is doing what they're supposed to do, who is political. Sometimes the media will put either a story or a picture or an image of the military apparently siding with some part of the political spectrum, and that's not the case. We're apolitical. We don't get involved in politics, and we just kind of watch the social issues wash across the services.
So, with regards to the war in the Ukraine and the U.S.'s involvement, I mean, there are people who probably feel maybe we shouldn't be giving all the money and the resources to them. Are there people fighting who believe that?
Are you talking about people in the military or people that are
people in the military? Anyone outside? The average person doesn't really know why, right? They just hear, "Hey, we're giving $100 billion to fight this." I understand the importance of, helping out the Ukraine, but the people fighting is everyone behind it? Because they're there. They have to do what they're told, right? I mean,
yeah, but I don't know of any Americans in the current active duty Americans or even reserve Americans that are over in Ukraine fighting. I don't know of any. I don't think that there are. So, of course, you see that we're providing support. I saw General Milley talk about stuff this weekend that we're doing, and you can see the aid going there. So I don't know that we've got, active duty forces. Now, every military person in the United States is an American, and they have their own opinions about what we're doing, but that's a policy of the administration. And so I don't know that I don't get involved in discussions with anybody. Nobody's come up to me and go, "Hey, do you think we ought to be fighting in Ukraine?" And we're retired or active. We just don't have those conversations.
Got it. But the interesting thing now is that it feels like people could get deployed at any minute, which is always the case. But from an outsider, it feels like in the world environment, it could be a lot more like this than maybe it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. Is that?
No, actually, so 9/11 changed everything, in the current world. And no kidding, starting 11 September of 2001, we were doing those deployments like that. And it was at the rotation squashed down. I mean, some of the very special troops went at a moment's notice. Some currently right now, some of our really, really capable, very elite forces are on very short alert times, and they know they're going to get deployed. but since 9/11 until right now, we've been cycling our forces, reserves, active duty, the Guard, everybody, to go after where the president and Congress want to send us. And I'm telling you, so I raised my right hand to support the Constitution of the United States in July of 1977, and every single member of the military did that. You go where you're told to go. And because we talked about the quality, we don't have a draft. And so you don't have people sitting around going, man, I don't want to go. I'm going to protest this thing. They've got their own opinions, of course. And a happy sailor is a bitching sailor, right? Is bitching about something. And so, here we go again. We're going to go do this kind of thing. But every single person in uniform is committed to national service. If they say we're going to go, we're excited to go.
But you were there, 36 years. In the course of that amount of time, you started as a child almost and become a grown-up, an adult, maybe get married, have family. Your opinion on that could change, and there's no recourse for that, right? What was the story about the guy who sort of just left the military? But I forgot what they call him. The guy got in a lot of trouble because he just stopped. He didn't want to be a part of it anymore.
Well, over my 36 years, there have been people in the military who have said, I'm not going anymore. And I'm not willing to follow the orders. And you have to. I mean, that oath, the support and defense of the Constitution of the United States, it says, I promise to obey the orders of the President of the United States and those officers appointed over me. It actually says that. You take an oath, and that's about the fourth line down. And so my 36 years, I had 15 deployments. And when I was CO in Nimitz, commanding officer of the USS Nimitz, 2 of them were very closely together back to back. And then later on, 2012, 2013, I was the admiral in charge of the strike group, and we went back over to the Arabian Gulf, again, back to back. And so we turned around and went. People were complaining about having to go so quickly and stuff, but it was our orders of what we did. And so, sure, I mean, you can say, hey, for various reasons, I just don't feel like doing this anymore. If you're active duty and you took that oath, you're going to be subject to the military justice thing and then go through, whatever those things are. So yeah, but no, we all go. And in the 36 years doing that, sometimes when we get out on cruise, on deployment, we go, hey, I don't know why we're out here, but okay. And when I was captain and admiral, I tried very hard to explain to all the sailors in my ship and my strike group why we were doing what we were doing. But the commitment to going, the cheery aye, that's the majority view.
It almost doesn't matter why. It's almost like one of my favorite movies was A Few Good Men. And it didn't matter why. It just mattered that they told you to do it.
Yep.
But is it important for people to understand why? Just for for you, to speak on the people that you dealt with, is it important to understand why?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in the military, and people talk about leadership in the military. Sure, I can order people to go, and that's the cliche. Hey, just order them. But if your team understands why, there'll be more. There will be more. The morale will be higher. The uncertainty will be lower. They'll want to do more to support the goals of and the objectives of the unit. They'll want to make the performance better. They will try harder. If they don't understand the why and they're not being told what's going on, they'll only do the minimum, and you won't get high performance out of the team. So the first thing that most leaders do, and that's kind of changed over my career. A lot of leaders just said, "Hey, do what I tell you," early on. But now a lot of military leaders and some of the civilian leaders as well are doing a better job of explaining the why behind what we're doing, instead of just say, hey, I just told you. They just told you to do it, because I told you. So yeah, it's very important. And if the sailors understand why, or the soldiers understand why, they'll go, okay, hey, I got it, boss. Even if it's not, say, look, we got to go do this. Here's the bottom line, and they'll pitch in.
It's a different environment than, say, the corporate world, where you're told what to do. You have a boss and you report to someone. But a lot of times there's collaboration. Like I could talk to my boss and say, hey, I have some ideas about that. There's not a lot of that going on where you're at least not until the top level, right?
Actually, no, there is, so again, when leaders, whether you're in uniform or an executive in a company, you sit down with your team and you talk and take the points of view or the worries. especially, in the military, when we talked at the very beginning about risk and whether you're on a carrier and there's risk in flight operations, you want people's heads in the game. So you don't want them distracted. You don't want them thinking about, the family at home and then comparing, why should I be out here when I got all these things at home going on? So if you can get to the why and you reduce the uncertainty and you can tell them why their service is important, their morale go up and they'll commit to, being out here. They'll focus better. They won't be distracted by, I wish I wasn't out here or something like that. So it's vitally important, especially in a high stress, high threat environment, to make sure that everybody's kind of comfortable with the mission.
You wrote a book. It's called Learn How to Lead to Win, available at your website, Mike Manazir.com. You can see it scrolling down here. Why did you write a book? When did you have the idea to write a book?
So February of 2022, I was at a meeting with a guy that's turned into my business partner. His name's Ben Carroll. And we were talking at this meeting about stuff. And somehow in the conversation, I told a story, which I like to do. I like to tell stories about when I was flying and being on carriers and stuff. And he says, Mike, you got to write a book. And I go, Ben, I already have a title in my head. It wasn't that one. It was another working title. He goes, what's stopping you? And I said, time. I have no time. I have a full-time job. He goes, oh, it's easy. You get that software you put on your computer, talking to a microphone, it creates a Word document. And I go, oh, that's kind of cool. And he goes, and I'll help you. And, oh, interesting. And so then he pushed me a little bit and I went down to Dallas and he set up a situation. I started talking into a microphone and he did the technical stuff, figured out how to work checklists to get us self-published, how to go do that. And so he did that stuff and I wrote. He helped me with the leadership lessons. So in that book, there's 33 stories that started from when I saw that I wanted to be a midshipman, go to the Naval Academy, all the way through flying and working in the Pentagon and sailing ships and stuff. And each one of those stories then has a leadership lesson attached to it. And the story, somebody asked me once if I had a journal. I don't have a journal. Those stories are burned into my head. I learned something from those stories and I can relate those stories, even though they were in like 1984. And I can tell you what it was like. And what Ben did on the leadership lessons is he said, oh, what did it smell like? What did it taste like? What did it look like? How did people react? What was the weather like? And so we sort of pulled the narrative of the leadership lesson out. So it matched kind of the story breadth and depth, right? So we did that. And then he found us an editor, Sandy Wendell, who is awesome. And she says, we're going to trim these 40 some stories down to 33. She liked those 33. And I said, no, those are cutting through the 4 one. Those are good, And
Book two.
So we published it.
The sequel. Those are the sequel. We all get, so many people have great stories, but they don't always translate to conversation or reading. So it's interesting. Also, what do I think about this is different than what other people think about this. How do you navigate through that as you're writing this?
So
you probably have 200 stories.
Yeah, I mean, in this one, we actually got into are you writing a memoir or are you writing a leadership book? Writing a leadership book. So each story that I had, of the 200 million stories that you have or in your life or whatever, there's a specific leadership lesson tied to that story. And so in the building of the book, doing the leadership lesson, tied to a story, get the story, there was a point I was trying to make. And it just became I think this would be an okay book. And so I've talked to a bunch of people that go, I was thinking about writing a book. And the thing I tell them is get that software. The one I use is called Dragon Pro. And you just talk on the thing. Cause I tried to write a story down one time, Matt, it took me hours to get like half a page. And so if you just narrate into the computer microphone, it writes a Word document. Now you got something you can play with. And so the time factor, I think, is what stops most people. That's what helped me a lot. That was the time saver.
It's called Learn How to Lead to Win. Why did you add to win at the end? Because obviously when you're in battle, you need to win, but you also need to survive, which is important, right? Leading to survive or showing people how to even get by. It's not always about winning, right? It's about getting by. So how does that, in your mind, leading differ between if you're trying to lead someone to win, if you're trying to lead a group to say, hey, we just need to survive? or to just, live everyday life and maybe excel. That's
So,
obviously subjective.
yeah. So the lead to win part is because I propose in my book that all readers, and it's not just for military officers. We built it for basically all ages. There's no cuss words in there. There's no bad situation. You give it to your 10-year-old and it's going to be fine. That hopefully enjoy it. And a lot of people said I gave this to my niece or my nephew or my grandson. And so the win part is I always wanted to get the best performance out of my teams when I was in the Navy or the team that I was part of. And so I believe that the things that I write about, if you do those things, you will get a high performing team. And all of us want to, okay, compare it against what? So some kind of a standard or better than the other company or, to win. That's where that comes from. And okay, I'm going to lead this team to beat the standard or to beat the other company or to get the most profit. And so that's why I put that in as a discriminator. And then the learning how piece is here, take my storytelling and see if you can learn from my stories to go do that. And I specifically go into, how to lead, like do these things. And here's what I did in the situation. And this is what I learned. Here's how I failed. Here's what I learned when I screwed up. And when I turned around and did it again, I did it better. And so that's kind of how the title's put together. But I think, anybody who reads the book is going to find it's a pretty dang good leadership book, buried in a whole bunch of stories. And then there's specific, things you can do, including 10 maxims at the end. We call them maxims at the end. We kind of just like, hey, do these 10 things. What we've done also, Matt, the first time I've told anybody about this, but off on the side, we have created what's going to be a free ebook that's takes each one of those maxims. And we've taken a story from the book, put in a maxim, then key takeaways, and then reflections. And it came out really good. And it's like a companion book, and it's going to be free. It's going to be free on the website. We're going to probably push it near the end of this calendar year. And so you read the Learn How to Lead to Win book, and then it says, here's the maxims. And then you go to this companion ebook, and it's going to have a chapter on each of the maxims and on how to do that.
Yeah. I think there's so many good stories and lessons out there on how to lead. And there's so many different ways. It's not to say that your way is right, but it worked for you. And it's something that, you feel good about too, right? Because there's ways to lead and to win and win at all costs. There's so many different theories about how to lead and how to win. But there's a lot to take from all of these different types of books.
Yeah, I will tell you, mine's a little unique because it has the stories in it, and it's my, my stories. But there's nothing new in that book. There's nothing new in leadership. It's the way you package the thing. And I will admit to anybody, I stole everything I used to
I
lead.
think that's with everything. There's so few new thoughts and ideas in these books.
Yeah. And so creating that story set there, and what I'm trying to do with that, I'm on kind of a quest. I want people to not lead with their title. I want more people to lead from their heart and with their own influence as a good human being, rather than I'm the Admiral, so you're going to follow me, or I'm the CEO, so you're going to follow me. And so that's really what I'm trying to do, is get people to understand how do you use vulnerability and empathy and emotional intelligence to connect with the people that are on your team, with your peers, to be a nice person, to be kind. And, people will want to follow you. And then when things get hard, if they already know they can trust you, trust is huge. That's the foundation of everything. If they know they can trust you and you'll be kind to them and you care about them and you care about their commitment, then they're going to follow you. You can do anything. Your performance is going to go up. And that's really what I strive to do with the book.
I think my guess is your father was the first person who gave you lessons on how to be a good leader. Is that fair? Yeah.
I learned how to lead from my dad. So my dad was a U.S. Marine. And as I describe in the book, he was tough. And I rarely met his standard. And there was one of the emotional drivers I talk about in the book is my dad is like, you're never good enough. And that's not what he said, but I had to get there. Right. And my mom was very, very, very supportive. She's, I'm the oldest son of two, and, you rock kind of thing. You're really, really good. But the two of the things kind of kept me with a little bit, hey, I'm pretty good, but no, I'm not that good. So kind of an imposter syndrome and some humility that stays with me as I go through all of these things. So it drove me to give it. But I learned my leadership stuff from my father first, and then played with it as I went through the Naval Academy and then as I went through my naval career.
Did you have good leaders all the time? I mean, because
No.
you're in the Naval, you probably had some people who you were like, this is not good.
No, yeah, absolutely. I learned the most from bad leaders, and I think everybody's going to say that. I had some really awesome leaders, and I had some average leaders. I had leaders who really, I guess I could call it, showed their spots. Like some people don't want to make a decision because they're afraid they won't get promoted. Some people, would just scream at you, and I've come to figure out that was probably through some kind of fear that they had. That they were going to look like they failed. But I learned from every single leader. The great thing about the military is that either you or the leader are going to change about every 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
And so if you just kind of stick it out for a little while, then
that's a long time though. I know time flies, but when you're in the military and you're serving, that could be a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be a long time. But I learned and I learned to lead across. I learned to lead up. I learned to lead down, and all of those leaders, had some kind of an influence on me as kind of I grew up, and I took things from each one of those leaders and either decided not to do them or to actually do them and shape my leadership style to that point. And the other thing too is, I deployed 15 times, and so when you're in this deployed mindset and life is hard, you don't want to make it harder for people as the leader, right? And so you want to take away uncertainty. You want to give them as much, time off or liberty or benefit as you can. You want to create a little bubble of goodness in the middle of all of the strife and stress and family separation. And I really, that one really came home to me. I have to figure out a way to make it as good as I can for my team. So yeah.
When did you know you were a good leader? I mean, was there a point where it clicked to you?
Well, I'm not going to say on your show and say I'm a good leader.
You have to believe you're a good leader because you wouldn't have written a book about it, and you wouldn't have gotten where you've gotten in the military. Yeah. So I say other people had said you're a good enough leader to put you in this position.
That's where I get it from. And people, it's the reflection and the reaction from people that are kind enough to say, hey, that's the best guy I ever served with. That's the best leader I ever had. I realized and recognized through feedback with my teams that things were working and they enjoyed working with me or having me lead them because of certain things that I did. One specific, for instance, right to your question, this actually happened when I was a 2-star admiral. I was in the Pentagon, and one of the 05 commanders, so he was an 05, a Navy commander, is leaving to go back to command, and I'm debriefing him on his performance. And so I'm writing a fitness evaluation on him, and he says, I said, you got any comments? He said, yes, sir, you're the best leader I ever had. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, because you let me do my job.
Yeah.
And I said, you have to do your job. I can't do your job. I couldn't do that. He goes, yeah, but you let me do my job. You trusted me with the result and therefore best leader. And that really struck home.
That's what I want to get your opinion on, because that's what I think is probably the biggest downfall for corporate America, is that people are not trusted to do the job that they've been hired to do. So that either means two things. One, you have people who are not qualified to do the job, or the people who are leading are micromanaging and not allowing you to do. That's a very important thing, to allow people to be who they are and to do what they have to do. And when you do that, I think performance will rise.
Yeah, you've hit actually 2 points, and these resonate with me both. The first one is allowing people to be who they are. That's caring about people. That's inclusiveness. That's caring about their work, caring about the fact they showed up, caring about their family situation, caring about what drives them. And that really can amp up your team when you do that. If you show you care, the first thing I talk about in the book is learning somebody's name, learning how to spell it, how to pronounce it, say the whole thing, learning them, being able to call them by their name without a name tag on or a uniform, anything like that, be able to do that. That's caring is first. The second one is delegation and empowerment. and, delegating down. That one is a hot button for me. And I agree, not only in corporate America, but actually in the military as well. There are many leaders who won't delegate down, tasks to their team members. And they're always micromanaging and stuff. And nobody can function under micromanagement or a leader that doesn't trust you to do the job. A lot of our bureaucracy is built because there are these levels of, approval that are out there. It's in the Pentagon, it's in corporate America, it's in public companies, it's in, communities, things like that. If we reduce that bureaucracy and you push delegation and empowerment down to the lowest level, people are going to be happy. And there's a whole bunch of, there's study after study that says people don't leave jobs because of the pay. They leave because they don't get to do their job or they don't like their boss. So yeah, you've hit exactly the two things I push on hard. Yeah. It's trust, and you delegate down, you empower, you extend that trust, and you when people do the right thing, you tell them, you like celebrate it. They did a great job, and this is great, and look at that. And everybody else sees them and goes, hey, I want to do that too. So you extend that empowerment down, and as a leader, you just do what you can do the only thing you can do at the top is the leader, and everybody else does everything else. You shouldn't be doing the same thing your team can do.
Lead by example. That how important is that?
Oh, huge. You have to model the behavior. As soon as you don't walk the talk, they'll stop following you. You have to lead ethically, and you have to lead with integrity. That's first. You got to be a moral person, and you have to do that. And then if you're telling people to do things and you're not doing them yourself, they won't follow you anymore. They'll see right through you.
I think there's a lot of people who are considered influences, leaders, thought leaders who aren't that. They're just propped up because they have a following that, hang on their every word. And I think that's not good for society. I think there's other people who deserve to be, I don't want to say put on a pedestal, but to have their voice heard and to be thought of as leaders. What do you see in society these days? What's the good leaders?
Yeah, I think that, it's interesting. There are not enough good leaders. And when they are effective, then people, they benefit from following those leaders. But social media amplifies so many things that, some of us don't find attractive, and there's why is that, why does that have 50 million views or whatever? Something is driving that. And then you get this multiplying effect. So I've observed that many influencers on issues, they blow up for sometimes who knows what the reason is. And then you might have an opinion, well, gosh, that we ought to be following that person over there, but that person's not driving the influencer thing. So I think we have to work harder to get the good leaders out and get them on as many platforms as we can and get as many followers as we can and get as many people to go, okay, this person over here, this is who we ought to be following. And you get that the good forces kind of come up over the top of the ones that, maybe not so good.
Yeah. Can you be a great leader and be liked by everyone?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You can be a great leader and people will want, and everyone will want to follow you.
Yeah, but that's more respect. I'm talking about people worry about whether they're liked or whether they're going to upset a group of people.
You cannot be an effective leader if you're worried about the fact that everybody likes you.
Yeah.
That's why I was struggling with the answer. Yeah. Because sometimes people will say, they'll go, yeah, follow that guy anywhere. I just like that guy. I mean, and so that it'll translate that attraction to somebody who cares about you and demonstrates caring, demonstrates empathy, demonstrates emotional intelligence, gives you the time of day, cares about you, delegates down to you. You tend to like that person. And if as a leader, you could do that to every single member of your team and you can show that empathy and stuff and create that benefit when they come to work, they're probably going to generally like you. But if you start out leading and making your decisions like I'm gonna make sure everybody likes me, you're not going to be effective.
Yeah,
you got to demonstrate being a good leader first by caring about them, by empathy, emotional intelligence, delegating down, trust, and they will like you, and you'll be effective. And even when you have to make big decisions, then they'll know what you're doing. I saw that comment about Machiavelli, Machiavellian kind of leadership. There, as you were talking about leading, I'm reading a book called 48 Laws of Power. And it's got a bunch of Machiavellian kind of rules in about power, how to have power. That's not the same as being a leader.
Yeah.
That's different.
But that's a different conversation about the world leaders who have the power, who are feared and respected. And I know we don't like to get political. I'd like to get political. Other people don't. But when Trump is talking about, liking and respecting the way Putin and Kim Jong, and then even going back to Hitler. Yeah, but Hitler was a great leader for what he was, but I don't think anyone should respect him or follow his path.
That's where you get stuck, right? Is that difference between demonstrated power and leadership, and we all have opinions about what good leaders are. So you can get kind of wrapped up around the axle, for the purposes of, my audience, the type of leadership I teach is, from the heart, caring, empathy, moral leadership, integrity. And then I support defending the Constitution of the United States. That's how I was brought up. So that's my ideal. That's my North Star. That's the thing that drives me. And so I kind of put things in that sort of a framework.
There's so much stuff to talk about, but that's a weird thing, the Constitution. It was written hundreds of years ago, and there's been some amendments to it, but it's still pretty outdated. It's hard to defend the Constitution from top to bottom of anything. A lot of it's vague. Does that ever occur to you?
It defines my country. I love the United States. I love America. I love the Republic. I love the way it was set up, and it gives me a focus. And so I have no, Constitution says that. To me, that is our national foundation. And our country was set up that way. And I don't think that people should go, the things, and I'm not picking on you. People shouldn't say that thing's outdated. We shouldn't do that. That's the foundation of our country.
Well, I don't think we shouldn't do it. It's the same thing. Laws are very easy to follow. The Constitution is extremely easy to follow. My point is things should be changed and laws should be changed. Not that we shouldn't follow it. That's my point.
And I think, and you're right, laws can be changed and the Constitution can be amended, and we have processes to do that. The good news is it's not very easy to amend the Constitution. And so you don't get the popular, hey, we should just change and go do that. It takes a huge, huge discussion to be able to go do that. But I mean, there's a story in the book in there that is very emotional to me about, going to survival training very early on in my Navy career, and the flag, the oath, all, at the end of this training, which was pretty harsh, all came, very emotional for me. And that cemented, what drives me as being an American naval officer. So, and I lean on it. Right. So you're right. I mean, constitutional law, this is that. I mean, the dignity of the presidency for me, everybody that serves in the federal government who raises their hand and swears an oath, they swear an oath to the Constitution. So for me, that's what I lean on hardest. Yeah. And if somebody wants to change it, okay, go through the process of changing it. But that's bedrock for me, Matt.
Is that blind faith? I mean, there's never a point where you're like, I'm pretty embarrassed about what's going on with America?
I'm never embarrassed with America. I tell you what, 36 years of being in the Navy, when I went out on deployment as a midshipman, the sailors back in 1977, they were actively doing drugs in the on the ship. I mean, like right there where I was, and we've had riots about race, and we've had inflation that was way above what we just experienced, and so for me, the country has done kind of this sine wave of stuff through various administrations for various reasons. We've been, our country was almost torn apart in the Civil War, so I think our country just goes through cycles, and we have this huge discourse. I mean, riots and, around the national conventions, like in Chicago and all these things, and fighting and stuff. So when people talk about, I want to return to that particular time, they have an affinity for, some time in our past. I just see our country going through cycles, and we tend to kind of go back to the middle. Yeah. We tend to kind of correct. So No, and I'm never embarrassed to be an American. I'll tell you what.
I'm not embarrassed to be an American. It's more about just embarrassed, or maybe embarrassed is the wrong word. Just, I don't know. I feel that way. I live in Florida. It's like,
Yeah,
it's just,
I think the media and the politics and the social media drive some of these extremes. I was going to
get
say,
that.
it's good we have this discourse. I mean, we're the way everything happens, being able to have that free speech, and so I just wish we'd discuss more than fight. I mean,
No, I agree. There's more fighting. Like I say, even when we're talking from the same thing, there's arguments. Like we should be able to have conversations about disagreeing, and there's right and there's wrong, and then there's some gray area. But we shouldn't be arguing about what's the truth and what's a fact, which I think is part of the problem. I went away when I lost my job a decade ago. Went away for like 3 weeks, hit 6, 7 different countries, and I came back and I posted, "Look, I don't care where I go. I love to travel. There's never going to be a country that's as good as the U.S. I would never want to live anywhere else but the U.S." And that's the feeling I have. I have the love for the United States that you have in a different way, I think. And there's other people who have that.
I was going to say, I'm glad you said that, because 15 deployments overseas. I've been in a whole bunch of different countries. And when I get back to the United States, I would just say, I'm so glad I live here. I mean, just everything, everything about it. We get talking about what should be and what has to be, and we wish something wasn't that way. But you're right. Compared to everywhere else,
even paradise. I mean, no one's going to want to live in paradise year round. There's, you can only have so much of, hey, I'm sitting out reading. The weather's perfect, but there's so much to do. Culture, and there's just so many different ways and reasons why.
Yeah.
And I'm not even just talking about vacationing and location and what there is to do. The freedom. While you and I obviously have more freedoms than other people do, and we hopefully don't take that for granted. But that's all based on what you fought to defend, and what these people are fighting to defend is the fact that we are able to have these conversations, to be able to choose and have these rights that other people don't. And we can't even understand. We couldn't even fathom how some of this stuff is, and how people can live in a world like that. I was at the Negro Leagues Museum, even just, and by no means are we anywhere near where we need to be in race relations. But man, some of the stuff I saw that happening in our backyard, it's scary that people think that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I
There's
agree.
a lot more of that outside of the U.S.
There's a lot more of that outside the U.S. The bias and hate outside the U.S. is in places is
Is that the most important thing to fight for? Is our freedom and our democracy? I mean, is that why people want to fight and join?
Yeah, I think so. Freedom, democracy, the ideals of this country. The Constitution, as we discussed. They want to. It's something bigger than themselves. I wanted to serve everybody that raises their hand and joins some kind of national service. They want to serve something bigger than themselves. And in fact, maybe not national service. People want to be part of something bigger than just themselves. And I think for the American military, it is the United States. It is because you can kind of get your head around defending the country, defending democracy against whatever you think that the adversary is going to be. So yeah, that's what I think.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I want to hear about your transition from retirement to now you work for Boeing with a relationship tied to the Navy. Was that immediate, or was there time off? How did that happen?
Yeah, it was pretty immediate. I was Boeing's customer, and in the Navy, and so when it came time, and what they do, and is people like me understand, the needs of national security. For me, it was the Navy. For my peers, it's the other services, and so we look to align with the American defense industrial base, and in particular, what Boeing provides with the needs of national security. And so we bring an intelligence over from the military into the company. I left the Pentagon in July of 2017, and I started work kind of across the street at Boeing in September of 2017. So it was, there's just a little tiny gap, but I kind of walked across the parking lot. The transition. So I went from kind of being the Navy customer to to understanding what the Navy needs from a Boeing perspective. So the context we're in was exactly the same. So the work material was very familiar to me. And then what I do like to tell people is, I was a leader in the military for 3 decades. And when I went over to Boeing, leading people is exactly the same. It's whether you're leading in the corporate world, all of the things that I write about in the book are exactly the same. Every story in there is my Navy experience, but every leadership lesson can be translated to, civilian life or community or something like that. So I found that I kind of had to learn the processes and stuff inside of Boeing. And then once I learned sort of how to operate in Boeing, it became a lot more comfortable because I was used to operating in the Navy.
If your father wasn't a Marine, if you didn't go to that game and see that, what do you think you would have done?
Yeah, I don't even know, man.
Something you could have done.
I think at that game we were meant to go there, and I was meant to see that, and I was driven by that. Maybe I would have found some other way to go into flying and go to the Naval Academy. Something else would have occurred to me, but I think that flash of like, that's it right there. That game's what set me started, and I'm a pretty focused guy anyway. I kind of look at things and go, okay, this is kind of where I'm going to go. That's kind of what I try to do in my career. So I probably would have settled on something like this. But I can't see myself doing anything different than that because it was like that right there. That's it. I just saw a picture of what I want to do. And so it was easy for me.
Do you still fly at all?
No, I don't. No.
Not even privately to go?
No, I fly around with one of my neighbors has an airplane, so we'll go flying every once in a while. But no, we got boats, and I go out on boats. That's enough, holes in the water to pour money into. So I don't.
If there was a Top Gun 3, and they had to bring you back into mission. Could you do it? Would you do it?
Of course.
Of course you would. We're going to let you out with the same question everyone gets. You can spend an hour, a day, 24 hours with anybody in the world. They have to be alive, and you can't be related to them. Who would you like to spend a day with?
Wow.
We had someone say Putin, which would be obviously we can't make that happen. I don't know why anyone would want to, but
yeah, I tell you what, I would like to spend 24 hours with Elon Musk.
Okay.
And here's why. One reason only. How does he translate his idea into risk acceptance? So when his rockets blow up, he celebrates. How does he get a mindset that says, now one of the things in my book is failing, but these are like huge failures.
Money.
Yeah, I guess so.
And it's interesting. What's going on with Twitter is how that turns out. He wants to charge. It's going to be really fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's never going to tarnish what he's done because he's done so many good things. But I think people have a different opinion of him than they did a year ago or 2 years ago. But it'd be a great conversation to
and you're right. Yeah, money, of course. But he had to earn the money, and so you had to get to that point. And I've spent a whole bunch of my life managing risk, but there was a tolerable level of it. Like, this is what could not happen right here. A lot of it had to do with money, and a lot of it had to do with assets. Like, I didn't want to blow up a rocket or go, I'm just going to eject out of this airplane because I don't like this airplane anymore or something,
He's been named before. He's not the most. I think Obama's. I still got to get this final list together. I think Obama's one, but Musk is up there, if not two. He's definitely a top 5 answer, and this is the 307th episode. So he's on the list. I just say if you get enough money and power and influence, you can make any of this happen. So we'll see if we can get it done. Really appreciate your time today. Buy the book. It's available on the website, as you see below. You can sign up for newsletters, all kinds of great content on that website. So check out the website. You can get the book. You can sign up for the newsletters. Maybe I'll see you in D.C. and Washington when I'm there in a couple weeks. I go
to all the Navy home games. So if you're at a Navy home game, we're going to see each other. Yep.
I will be there. I'll come by and say hello. And we really appreciate your service to the country for 36 years. And the stuff you're doing now is only there to help enhance the other people who are doing it. So really appreciate your time today. Check out the website, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Good to be with you today.